Today, I'd like to talk about announcements and how they can be a wonderful gateway to your course. Announcements should not just be a place for stating deadlines and assignment requirements. They can be used to pull together the various strands of information so that the students can see a more complex picture of the course, as well as understanding how the field works in a larger context. Announcements are a great way to add color to your course. I want to focus on 3 easy ways you can energize your class through announcements. First, you can add additional media resources to enhance your content. There are so many wonderful resources like videos and articles that you can use to supplement and highlight your instructional presence. You can also connect your subject to current events. Of course, current events are always a great way to remind students how the field or their subject is applicable to what is going on in the world right now at this moment. So if they feel that their class has relevancy and that the material that they're looking at has relevancy, they're going to really engage more with what they're looking at. Finally, include the students in your research. It's really amazing what happens when you show them the passion that you have for your own subject and your own content and how that's being used in the larger field that you're studying. So I'd like to take a minute and show you some examples of how I implemented these concepts into my own class. So first, I like to add additional resources into my announcements because it really gets the students' attention. So here is an example of a class that I taught. It was an introduction to humanities class. And by taking a quick look at this, and if you scan through, you can see that, yes, I mentioned you have a quiz coming up. There's a worksheet you'll need to do. But I lead with a very fun video from a group called the School of Life. And you can use whatever resources you find that are beneficial to the content that you have in your class. But it's a lot of fun and it leads with something fun. But you can also see how I've taken all the different informational strands, as I mentioned before, and pulled them all together. I'm showing them what I did last week and what we're doing this week and how that big picture looks. You might be focusing on Monet, but say, for instance, what was going on in the world at that time that allowed Monet to be such a wonderful painter of outdoor scenes. So here I'm talking about what allowed for that to happen. The traveling easel, where they're painting outdoors, it made it much easier. Traveling by steam engine train, it was important to be able to get to these locations more quickly, and then they could get back to Paris if they needed to. So this is something that you can do in your announcements to pull all that information together. A second way to use announcements is to connect them to current events. With many students connected to the news with just the click of a button, your connection can bring attention to articles that have been vetted appropriately for content in a sea of misinformation. My personal example here discusses the destruction of an Assyrian palace complex by ISIS in 2016. The continued decimation of priceless artifacts and sites is a tragedy for all, and my own connection with this brings the students closer to the topic as well. Something that would have originally been on the periphery of a student's world now comes into immediate focus, especially if they can say, well, I have a professor that knew someone that was working on this site, as I did at that time. Finally, students want to know what you research. By showing them how the topic that they are studying at an introductory level can progress into a field of research, they can see the relevancy of their own efforts. It also allows a professor to show their passion for the subject, which is a great way to connect to the students. I've used examples from my own teaching to demonstrate how this can work. I work with beds in ancient Egypt, and when I teach my students about artifacts in humanities classes, they can see how the methodology that they are using can be applied in a more intense area of research. Each of these examples are just a few of the ways you can use announcements to connect to students.